Right,
All
you
right.
start recording when you're ready and I'll leave.
Yep. I'm going to start recording now. Hello, Tina. It's so great that you're back. It's been a while
Thanks,
since you've
Ruth.
been on the podcast. How have you been?
Yes, I have been reasonably good. Thank you very much. Doing the work and seeing clients for the Institute and running the Institute, restructuring the Institute, going back to teaching, leaving Wilma. It's been a big few months.
Yeah, it really has
Yeah.
been a really big few months. So, what has changed with the Institute since we last spoke on here?
Gosh, I think the last time we spoke was almost towards the beginning. So we have restructured our team because our team has grown and we needed to make sure that we were governing at a different type of level. And so I'm meant to be stepping back from the therapeutic side, and I'm still seeing a lot of clients until the end of this year. But I don't know, pretty much the rest of the changes people can see on Facebook and Insta and through our website. We've got a fundraiser coming up, Seeds of Hope, where we're selling flower seeds through September. So that will be a nice little way of bringing some income into the Institute because everything we still do is for free. All of our services and programs run for free.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll definitely include the link of that in the description when the podcast is published. So
Perfect.
there's definitely been a lot of increase in clients as well that I've noticed.
It has
Almost
been.
double since we last spoke last year.
Well, we've got three therapists now, myself, Lorna, and Rosemary. Luke and Lorna and I are about to have a meeting to look at a process whereby we um, recruit other volunteers. We have two counsellors who would like to volunteer. So we're looking at a process, how we best build them into the structure of the Institute. So our therapeutic side is definitely growing. We've got 4 support groups running now in Wallandilly, Macarthur, online, and Wingecarriby. So yes, the therapeutic side is definitely growing.
Yeah. And so today, obviously, we're planning on talking about the harsh reality of therapy in all what it is, what's it like.
Yeah.
So, what are some, I guess, beliefs or theories that new clients come in when they're experiencing therapy, what they believe is going to happen versus
Yeah.
what actually happens?
I think a lot of people, when they start working through their sexual trauma, have an expectation, and we all wish it could be like this, that they will start doing the work, they'll have a few sessions, and that'll be it. They'll be ready to move on in their lives and in their world, and all of that will be behind them. And the reality is not that. Well, not that I've noticed for sexual trauma. Usually, sexual trauma is compounded by past traumas and especially by childhood sexual abuse. So if someone comes to us assaulted as an adult, usually there's been some sexual abuse as a child, and they have not worked through that, thinking it was all okay and that they were able to move through their life. And then all of that comes back at the same time. So you're working through compounded trauma. Or complex trauma, and it takes longer than that because you've got to rewrite the stories that you told yourself as a child about who you were to fill the holes in what you were understanding was happening to you or not understanding what was happening to you. So it becomes more complex and more intense than what people envisage. They're also surprised that between sessions, they can find themselves very discombobulated and dysregulated. So we do try and give strategies so that they've got tools they can utilize. But also we structure our therapy slightly differently here, where our clients do tend to have access to us between sessions, because we know that healing sexual trauma is not something you nicely package into hour sessions each week or each fortnight. It's not that easy, if only it were. But the reality is not. Healing can be exceptionally dark.
Yep. And I've noticed, and I'm sure others too, that you can be triggered by the smallest of things that are considered, I guess, like in your mind, you're like, I don't understand, that seems irrelevant. But it just seems like the most minute, inconspicuous things can really send you off and spiral if you don't take notice of that, which, in the beginning, when you don't really have that connection with your body,
Yeah.
you just don't realize those things.
Absolutely correct. And you're right, they can come from anywhere. If my hormones are out of alignment, which when I was younger they definitely were, now not so much, but every now and again I have a month like this month with the super moon. I've had a month where my hormones are a little bit more exaggerated, and so I am very irritable, and the smallest of things are activating me in terms of my irritability. Are they bringing up sexual trauma stuff? No, but they are bringing up my stories. And so I'm having to sit and think, okay, this is a story. You're a bit hormonal. You're a bit activated. Is the story true? No, it's not. What evidence have I got to support that it's not true? And I go through my evidence and I go, okay, can you breathe through this or tap through this? Or what do you need now to be able to shift this energy? And so that's when I'll do small things like even washing the dishes, which can shift that energy. Getting up and moving out of the space that you're in is really important when you're feeling activated, if you can move.
Yep. So that somatic movement, I believe the
Yeah.
term is called. And I
Well,
definitely,
no, I don't mean somatic. I mean literally just moving rooms. So
oh,
yes,
okay.
you can do some somatic work if you want to, like some yoga or some polyvagal therapy, all that. You can do anything like that, absolutely. But even just getting up and moving your physical space. So literally just stepping into a different room, changing your clothes, having a shower, brushing your teeth, going outside from inside, anything small like that, because the minute we move even just a millimeter to a different side, we've got a different perspective. Or you can try and build in a different perspective. So yes, somatic therapy and all that stuff, but also just physically just moving rooms.
So even something simple, yeah, like walking or standing or even just changing a position can have a more, can also help with that activation.
Yeah, well, because it shifts your energy. If you can move, like some people, when they're activated, are physically rooted to the spot, then I would suggest to them, and people obviously who are listening to this won't know, but I'm now going to tap my collarbones with both of my like hands and just say, I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. I am safe. And then if you find that's not working, what that does is it stabilizes your central nervous system. But you can also just breathe. So breathing in through your nose, holding it for a couple of seconds, and then slowly exhaling through your mouth. Those things can bring you back into your body if you're frozen and paralyzed. And sometimes when we're activated, we do become frozen and paralyzed. So bringing yourself back into your body is really, really important. So the simple act of tapping on your collarbones or taking deep breaths with your eyes closed and breathing out very slowly, the exhale being longer, is really important. They can help. Simple strategies that can help.
Yeah, and also just with the breathing, because I find that personally really helpful for me as someone who has
Yeah.
a freeze response. Can that work for all the types of reactions, like the fight response, flight response, fawn response? I don't
Look,
know what the
even
other ones are there.
yeah, well, fawn, flight, fight, freeze.
Oh, there we go.
So you mentioned them all. Look, everyone's different and everyone's body works in different ways. So I can't categorically say that that would work for everyone. Research shows that it works for the vast majority of people. And logic tells us that breathing in particular is something we have to do to stay alive. So it's something we've got as a natural resource straight away. So I definitely suggest breathing in all of those spheres. And if it doesn't work, then I suggest tapping or even just shaking and bouncing yourself. So knees or feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, and then just let your body bounce. And that can also, the idea is to try to get back into your body. So even if you do the relaxation response and point your toes, pull them back, clench your calf muscles, clench your buttocks, clench every sort of muscle as you go through your body. Anything that brings you back into the body will help with any of those responses. You've just got to find the one that will work for you more often than not, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful advice as well. The Quijun method. You always
Yeah,
speak about that. I always
I
remember
love it.
that. I know I use it too a lot, actually. I think that's why, like, I love that's actually, I think I figured out that why, that's why I love the rebounder so much.
Yeah,
Because the jumping, I think,
yeah,
really helps alleviate, particularly when I'm stressed, that trauma and shifts that energy.
it really does.
Yeah, and so I think definitely, I think one of the aspects I get, I think I feel gets missed when it comes to therapy is the relationship you have with your body changes,
Yes.
particularly with sexual trauma. And I don't necessarily mean like physically appearance wise. I mean, you tend to notice things more about how your body process things. I've noticed some problems go away, some might flare up. And
Yeah.
it's a really, I guess, interesting path on how to navigate that. And I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about that particularly with sexual trauma,
Yeah.
it really brings up a lot of activation surrounding how you accept and I guess are aligned with your body.
Well, absolutely, because when, especially if you're a child, and you are sexually traumatized through the actions of someone you trust, or through an adult, or anyone who is sexually inappropriate with you. And when you're young and you don't necessarily reach out to anyone to tell them, you fill those holes in your understanding with your own stories. And one of those stories is that we start to not trust our body. We feel that our body's betrayed us, especially if, um, as a child or even as an adult who's been assaulted, your body responds the way a body should with sexual interaction. And you orgasm, or you are tantalized, or you become activated, sexually aroused, which is perfectly normal for our bodies to experience. But then you think, well, hang on a minute, my head is telling me I don't like this, and that it doesn't feel comfortable. I feel really scared, but my body's enjoying it. So we start to build a gap or a disconnect between our body and our trust. We stop trusting our bodies. And that's why a lot of childhood sexual abuse victim survivors struggle in adult relationships, because they don't necessarily trust their body the way they need to for a healthy relationship. And so you're right, as we move through our life. So a lot of sexual abuse victim survivors have issues with food, because food is how we nourish and nurture our body. And so we either deprive ourselves of the nourishment, or we emotionally eat and satiate ourselves with the nourishment. And either which way, we end up with issues with food, and then with body image, and even just our general health, because it's not healthy to be um, morbidly obese. It's also not healthy to be too underweight or too thin. And so we end up trying to control what we haven't been able to control. And sometimes it's a way of protecting ourselves. If I make my body undesirable, so extremely underweight or extremely overweight, maybe I'll be safe and nobody will want me. And then, because humans crave connection, we struggle with the whole thing of, well, now nobody wants me, but I don't feel safe if I'm a healthy weight, because that's when I was assaulted. And it's a cycle that continues and blows and goes every which way it wants to, and none of it is very supportive. So when we heal sexual trauma, we need to heal on every sphere of life. We need to heal our body. We need to heal our emotions. We need to heal our psyche. We need to heal our brain. We need to heal our soul. Everything needs to be healed. So it becomes a long process, and it's often a dark process, because it's a lonely journey healing sexual trauma. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of stigma and shame associated with sexual trauma in our society. So people are reluctant to talk about it freely. There's also a lot of people who still have very ignorant attitudes, who think that you can just lock it up in a box and move on, which is not easy, because it's not the sexual trauma itself that targets you and changes the way you see the world. It's the impact of that. It's how we internalize what happened to us. So it's the lack of trust, or we over trust. So we become naive. We don't know how to perceive the world that we live in accurately, because we haven't been able to trust our own judgments in the past, and we haven't been able to trust our body, and we felt unsafe, and we couldn't reach out for help. And often when kids reach out for help, they're disbelieved, especially in the past, or they're told they'll be all right. They don't need to get counseling, and so they internalize it and they work it through themselves. And that's I worked through a lot of mine myself, and I would never, if I had my time again, knowing what I know now, I would reach out for help, because it's not something that you can do very well on your own. And people
Yeah.
tell me they can. I disbelieve that, and I see evidence that they're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely think that with, I wouldn't say, I guess it's easily accessible therapy, but I guess with the rise of a lot of self-help toolkits on like TikTok and Instagram, not
Mm.
that they're bad, but I think that a lot of people do feel that they are proper substitutes for in-depth therapy. And I feel like with sexual trauma, it's just not feasible. What's your opinion about that?
100% agree with you. I think any support you can get is great, so long as it keeps you safe and it's a healthy way of releasing and processing what happened to you. But I would argue that even when you see a counselor or a psychologist or any type of therapist, I think there needs to be a combination of a real understanding and empathetic understanding of what the lived experience of living with sexual trauma is. And I know that the therapists I've resonated most with, and what my clients tell me, is that they feel safe knowing that the person sitting opposite them has done this work because they've lived that truth. And even though every experience is different, there's an instant acceptance from someone, from a therapist that has done their own work and has had the academic learning and all the rest of it. There is that implicit understanding of what it's like to go through the journey, even though the journey is different for everybody. There's an understanding of someone who's got that lived experience, and it makes a difference to your recovery. It makes a difference to how safe you feel in a session, and it makes a difference to how much you can reveal. I've had clients say that they got to a certain point in their therapy and then they weren't being seen or heard, and the therapist tried to argue with them and tell them that what they were experiencing was not real or right. And that's not good, because we already don't trust ourselves. So when you reach out and trust, you need that to be validated. So people need to be careful who they see. It needs to be someone they resonate with and someone that knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good segue into another harsh reality, is in your relationships with your close people around you are going to change significantly, whether you would like it or not. And I guess what are, what are the highlights surrounding that? Like, how can your healing and your like healing with your trauma and going to therapy and working on yourself, how can that affect the people around you, which we see a lot, I'm sure you do with your clients, that it changes significantly who you feel safe and connected with.
Your circle becomes smaller, because as you start to heal, you develop the capacity and strength to create safe and healthy boundaries with people. And you no longer feel that you need to give so much of yourself away to people. So your circle changes. And being in someone's life who is going through the process of healing their sexual trauma, I don't imagine is easy. Um, because there's a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of moments that don't make sense. Um, there's a lot of times where the person is quite literally, and for want of a better word, batshit crazy. And they oscillate between wanting to die and wanting to live. And it's hard. It would be very hard being intimately connected with someone who's going through their own healing. It would take that person to have great resolve and great patience and great love, I think, to be able to work through that journey with someone else. I think communication is important, and honesty is important, and giving each other space is important. With your intimate people, I think even explaining, if you've got children as you're going through the process, to explain age appropriately to them what may or may not be going on, that it's not their fault, that it might be a difficult few months or year or something like that, would be advantageous. Um, I think with your friends, if you're focused on your healing and you've got someone you feel safe talking to, that's great. That person may not always want to be able to or have the capacity to listen. So that can put pressure on friendships, because when you're in your healing journey, it becomes all consuming at times. So if you're sharing it with people, you want those people to respond, but not everyone has the capacity to be in there for the long haul. So you've got to be mindful that your friendships will change and that you may lose people who can't go on that journey with you for not through any fault of your own, but they might become activated themselves. There are so many people who are impacted by childhood sexual abuse that you never know if you're talking to someone who has or has not been. So if someone's activated themselves personally, they may not be able to stay in your sphere, like your circle anymore. I think it takes a great toll on relationships of any sort, especially family relationships. In the case of mine, my perpetrator was a family member, and it's fractured my relationship with part of my family. Um, and that's just it's sad, like it's devastatingly sad, but it's the reality, because as you heal, for me, I started to understand that I was actually a valuable human being, that I was worth something, that I did not deserve what was done to me, um, and that I stayed quiet for a long time because I didn't want the family to be disrupted. I didn't want any chaos to come from it. And people also don't quite know how to respond when you say that you've been sexually traumatized. They don't know what to say. And the saddest thing about that is all that you need to say to someone is, I hear you and I see you. That's it. Validate. Don't argue. Don't tell them. Don't want details. If someone wants to share their details, they will. Um, but vicarious trauma comes into play as well. You've got to make sure those people you share with are safe as well, and they've got their own therapy, which is why we tend to do work with victim survivors and their closest people, because those closest people need support as well, and they often won't seek it because it didn't happen to them, but they can experience vicarious trauma as a result of hearing and knowing that someone you love has been through something that's changed them for life. They never get that part of themselves back that is taken. But it's not all doom and gloom either, because they get to rebuild their life the way that they want it to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think what you've just mentioned, I feel is also really beautiful. It's very honest as well. And I think it's also really important to understand that a lot of like, it's not our fault if these relationships finish. It's just sometimes the people just do not have the capacity to understand or to even, support us in our journey. And that's okay. But I think it's also okay to feel a sense of betrayal in that, or to feel like a sense of grief or loss
I
for
think
that.
grief and loss, betrayal, no, because but betrayal is what I think we would automatically feel at a certain part in our healing journey, but it's not a betrayal. People all have to be empowered to say, I can't ride this bus with you anymore because it is too activating for me, or I'm finding it too difficult. Um, I also don't think friendships and close people should take the place of therapy. I think you need to be in therapy if you are impacted by your sexual trauma. Not everybody is. Some people do manage to shut off from it. I honestly wish I had been one of those people, but no, that wasn't my path in life. I had to go through the murky underground of it and deal with it. Not that they haven't dealt with it, they've just dealt with it in a different way. There's no judgment there. Sorry, that sounded a bit judgy. Um, it's just I really am envious of people that can just lock it away and that's it. Because I know the profound impact it's had on my life. Having said that, it's not all bad. So I don't think it's a betrayal if someone can't be there. I think it's a betrayal if they ghost you and they don't have a conversation with you. I think the conversation needs to be had that is along the lines of, I don't think I can continue this journey with you in this capacity anymore. I love you. I wish you all the best, but I don't have capacity. I don't think that's a betrayal. I think if someone ghosts you, that's a betrayal, and that's just really poor form in relationships, full stop. But I think so long as there's honesty in the communication, it's not a betrayal.
Mhm.
We
And
would see it as a betrayal, but it's not.
yeah, I guess in that moment, particularly I think with a lot of sexual trauma survivors, I've noticed a theme of rejection dysphoria, as
Mm.
in we experienced rejection way more, I guess, intensely than
Yeah,
others. And I
absolutely.
think, and I think it's also a
The fear
real,
of abandonment.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's also a harsh reality is people are going to say no to you. And you unfortunately need to be able to, I guess, healthily be able to process that and accept that it's not your fault and that these things just happen. And I think it's also really scary because it's also affecting that rejection part, but also our trust as well.
Mm. That's why communication's vital. Communication is vital and empathy in that, but communication is vital. Um, because victim survivors do feel things more acutely. They feel it more intensely. They will read into things that aren't there because they're used to filling holes with stories. So I know that my most successful relationships these days, now that I'm on the other side of the darkness, um, they rely on really strong communication, and that's exhausting for both people involved. So I have a very small circle as a result of that, because it's exhausting having to be so conscious and consciously communicating and being mindful of everything, and having someone say to you, hey, I think you're spiraling, and you go, I'm all good, thanks, I'm not spiraling. And they go, well, you did this and you did this, and in the past, that's signs of you spiraling. And then you sitting there and going, oh, fuck, I might be spiraling. It's nice to have someone that can see that, because then you can put stuff in place, not to stop the spiral. Sometimes the spirals are necessary in trauma healing, because they help us get into darker or deeper places that we need to get into to be able to release, so that we can keep moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And
There's this
so,
fear of spiraling and becoming dark, but unfortunately,
yeah,
reality.
yeah, exactly. And I think, and obviously, like if you are going to therapy, it is a lot more helpful, to be able to go through those spirals when you have therapy and support, which is why, we're both so pro therapy, because when you are going through those muddy times, when life does not seem at all very hopeful, you
Yeah,
really do need that support.
yeah, you do. You do. And you need to force yourself to utilize it, because one of the hardest or easiest things for victim survivors to do is not ask for help, and to hide from it, and to not go to places that are supportive, um, when you know you need to. So you're right. Like, that's why I think we run our support groups, and for the most part, they're quite successful for the people that attend, because it gives them a safe space where they can vent and offload.
Yeah.
And having regular therapy enables the same thing. So when you're a sexual trauma victim survivor, monthly sessions won't work for you. It's too far apart. You need to do more concentrated work. I recommend, when you first start, if you can, and this depends on the therapist and yourself, but no, hang on, I don't know which way I'm going to go there, weekly or fortnightly. Yeah, but it's not always easy in this day and age.
And it's not always, I guess, viable or cost effective.
I was going to say, therapy can be exceptionally expensive. Like, I know that I pay $250 a session. I'm lucky that I do not need to go. Well, I use it as a top up maybe once or twice a year, and I have a mental health plan for that. But I know that a lot of the clients that I work with in the institute, you can go a year with fortnightly sessions and be tipping the tip of the iceberg. And if they were in private therapy, that would be $250 a fortnight. So $250, like, it'd be $6,000 or $7,000 a year just in therapy. And people in this day and age do not have that disposable income, which is why I've also always been quite strong on the fact that in the institute, all services are free, because everyone is entitled to top quality therapy, especially for sexual trauma, because it impacts your whole life and everyone around you.
Yeah, and I feel like it's amazing. And I'm pretty sure from what I've done research on, we really are one of the only institutes in the area that we're located in that offers free, affordable, accessible therapy for sexual trauma. Because we
Specifically, yeah.
yeah, because we do live in a more regional area. And even then, like that, I think even location as well is such a real make or break to being able to access therapy. You know, when we're like when you're in like regional rural areas like we are out here, it's
Yeah,
rough, more rough than usual.
yeah. Yeah, and that's why we run the online space as well, so that people from all around Australia, from wherever they are, can access it. Um, if only we could offer more. There are groups, support groups I've noticed have popped up in Sydney, but they're 1 hour group sessions, and I don't think they charge. I'm sure they're free, but I think they get grants backing, whereas all of our therapy, no one is paid in the Institute. Like everyone is voluntary. Um, everyone, and will be for a while yet, because it's hard getting money in.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that also brings to like, I guess one of the biggest realities of healing is it is long. It is so long,
Yeah,
like years. I mean, personally, for me, for both of us, years,
yeah,
you know, year long.
yeah.
And I think, you know, and I think you really have to be in it for the long haul and understand that. I don't know if it's lifelong, but it does take up a
No, it's
really
not
good chunk of
lifelong.
your life.
Oh, it's not lifelong. Like if
That's
you're
what I read.
doing the work and you're making the changes that you need to make, it's not lifelong. I'm in maintenance, and I've been in maintenance for probably a year now. Um, and realistically, was probably in maintenance for a period of time before that. Um, so I still will get activated. I'm conscious of those activations, and I have strategies to deal with them. I still spiral. I always will. I was having a chat with one of my inner circle, Kristen, a few weeks ago. It might have been a couple of months ago now, where we were talking. She had been reading something about how the body holds on to memories, and so there are times of the year where your body could be experiencing a depression or a sadness or a grief, and you're going, what the hell's going on? You have no conscious awareness of what's going on, but it's because your body remembers something that was done to it. And so it's still emoting. And I absolutely loved that, because there are periods of the year that I will always spiral in. Always, without fail, every year around July, mid to end of July and the beginning of August, I spiral. I did this year. I do every year, and I have no idea why. I have no conscious memory of why I would spiral at the same time every year. But I know that I do, because it's that year, a few years ago, where I set up the gratitude group to try and bring myself out. Well, it did succeed in bringing myself out of the spiral. Number one, gratitude. Number two, service. So that enabled me to shift that spiral. But I'm conscious of it every year, that I'll just spiral and become sad for a week or two. And I can't pick anything in my life that causes that. So it's got to be a physical memory that I have no conscious awareness of. And I'm now, because I can put words to that, I'm okay with that. I know it's coming, and I can make sure that I get more time to rest and more time at home, or choosing to do more things that I love doing and spending time with the people that I deeply care about. But looking after yourself in that way is vital.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's lifelong. I think the impact can be lifelong. I still get caught up in my stories sometimes. I'm conscious I'm in a story, and I can sort of have a giggle at it sometimes, and other times I just cry and feel miserable about it. But the stories kept me alive for so many years, that of course they're that entrenched. Like I'm 53, they're entrenched. So yes, a lot of them have been shifted and moved, and I live a much healthier life, and I have healthier relationships, and I'm happier, much happier. Um, so I don't think it's a lifelong healing journey. I think once you've done the bulk of your work and consciously worked through it and really taken that journey seriously, because it's easy to become stagnant and stuck, because it's terrifying and it's lonely and it's dark and it can be oppressive. And I think in the pre-chat we were talking about like propensity for suicide, and that darkness. It's real. There have been many times I've wanted to die, and once I've actively planned it, that was a long, long time ago now. Um, but it's the reality, because you just want it to stop. You just want it to stop, and you've done nothing to deserve it, because it was something that was done to you, yet you're the one carrying the life sentence, as I like to call it. When perpetrators are jailed for 6 months and they think that's the end of their life, you think, hang on a minute, the person that you did something to has a life sentence. You're getting off light, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's also, and I think that also really brings up, I guess, a very common type of reality as well. Is it is quite common that in, I guess, particularly the beginning of your healing journey, or even just random moments, that you are going to feel angry and frustrated and
Yeah.
struggle with accepting that this has happened to you, because
Yeah.
you, none of us deserve it, but
That's
it
right.
just happens. And it's really hard, I think, to accept that and not get angry by it, or feel, just saddened, or,
All
just
of that.
hard. It's hard to accept and acknowledge.
Yeah. I've been through phases that I'm so angry that nothing will get the anger out of me because I think it's so wrong and it's so unfair. That used to be my own experience. Now I'm angry at other people's experiences, and I'm angry at society, and I'm angry at the way systems don't take it seriously and that there's so much stigma and shame. I get angry still a lot, but I channel that anger into service. Um, and I think that, but I think it's also fair. Oh, all over the shop. I think those emotions are also fair, and I think they have to be expressed in a safe and healthy way. Otherwise, they eat you alive, literally. So it is important to share your emotions in a safe space. And if you haven't got a safe space like a therapist or a support group, then or a close friend that you can share that stuff with, then something that you can do if you've got matches or a lighter, paper and pen, is write out what you're feeling in angry strokes on a piece of paper and then burn it. And it doesn't seem like much, but most people find the act of that release quite therapeutic. You might have to do it a few times. James W. Pennebaker did research with trauma and narrative therapy, and he had college students write about a traumatic thing for 4 days in a row for up to only 20 minutes. It didn't have to go the whole 20 minutes about that one incident of trauma. And I would add burning to it at the end. But he found that trauma impact dissolved significantly and stayed dissolved significantly. So that's a strategy. There are so many strategies around. So if you're angry as well, walking or running or some sort of physical activity is good to transmute that anger. Screaming into a pillow is good. Hitting other people is not. Causing rifts in your relationships is not good. It's not healthy. So it's about finding and embedding healthy strategies for everything that you may encounter during your healing process. And that's why therapy is important. Therapists often have strategies
Yeah, and I think
and learning
that's,
some tools.
yeah, exactly. And I think definitely that's, I think for me, that like that's the benefits of really going to therapy, is you help create your own self-help activation
Yeah.
toolkit, whatever you want to call it, that you
Yeah.
know that the strategies are going to benefit you. Because
Yeah.
that's another reality, is that, different types of therapy don't work for everyone, and it is an experimental process.
Absolutely correct.
And so, sometimes the first time you practice a therapy, it might work for you, and that's amazing. Majority of the time, I've noticed with people I spoke to, n- probably not. Usually takes around 2 or 3 tries and different attempts and stuff to find what works for you.
Yeah. Well, and also I think because healing is a process, right? It's not that one thing, like I don't believe anyone should stay with one therapist for a prolonged period of time, like 10 years or something. I don't know that that's healthy because I think you become so used to each other that there's no challenge, there's no friction anymore, that promotes opportunities for growth, right? Um, so, like, I know through my own healing journey, I've tried lots of different modalities. Some were very successful at different points in time, but weren't successful at others because we shift and we change and our journey grows as well. So, it's really, really important to be open to trying different things, which is why I have a huge modality toolkit because my Reiki, my meditation, my yoga, tapping, sound, everything healed different aspects of me at different points in time. And rather than just do them, I decided to become qualified in them because that's who I am. But it served and it now serves others. So, again, for me, one of the biggest things in healing is that service. And I hear so many victim survivors get to a point where they go, I want to be giving back one day. And that's when usually for me, I go, yep, they've got this. They understand this is going to be a long-term thing and they're okay. They know there's going to be ups and some more downs, and that the grief is horrible. You've got to grieve the idea that life could be any different. You've got to grieve the loss of the person that was before or could have been, and it's hard. There's a lot of identity work done in sexual trauma healing, because who are you without that trauma? Who are you as that trauma heals? Who are you in the depth of that trauma? Who were you as you were being traumatized?
Yeah. And I honestly think like we could make an entire episode about identity work alone because it's such an important,
Mm.
I guess for me, like for me personally, like that's a significant factor for me, that identity work. I think
Yeah,
that's like something we could probably talk about on its own because it's so intense, right?
yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think we'll have to definitely talk about that in the next future. But
Oh,
I
we
think,
can schedule that in to record next week if you
yeah,
like.
yeah. But I think definitely like with the final reality I wanted to talk about before we finish, can
Yeah.
we discuss how exhausting it is to be conscious all the fucking time?
Yeah, it's exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. Um, it is exhausting. And being hyper vigilant and hyper focused, all exhausting. It is really, really important that in your life, you balance your healing work with moments of joy and things that bring you happiness. It is so important to book them in. And that will look different for everybody, obviously. But it is, I think, if I could do my journey over again, there are a few things I'd change. I have no regrets because it's brought me to where I am and I live quite a blessed life. But um, well, very blessed life actually. But the one thing that I would have brought in sooner was really giving myself permission to experience joy and happiness and do those things that bring me joy and happiness more often and more consistently. Not because it takes away the pain, it doesn't, it just balances. And it means that you don't feel so hopeless that it's never going to change. You still carry some hope because you're still doing some right stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also really important to, I guess, spread that healing process out because I'm sure other people like this, but I personally am very impatient. I wanted to get all my healing done in a quick succession, and you just burn yourself out and you spiral even more because you're too focused on dealing with the trauma and darkness that's inside of you rather than actually focusing on the pleasure of life, even just the smallest things. Like for me, the sun has been a really helpful thing, like going out in sunlight, showing
Mm.
gratitude for the sun, feeling that rays on my skin. It doesn't have to be a really big thing to
No.
bring you joy in life. It can just be the small things, but it's so
Be
important.
binge watching or streaming something on TV.
Yeah.
It can be gaming. It can be having coffee with a friend. It can be reading a book. It can be playing with your dogs. It can be killing your dogs if your dogs are like mine. It can be anything at all. It can be going for a drive. It can be, like you say, simply just sitting in the sun or closing your eyes and feeling the warmth of the sun on your face. Likewise, the breeze can be going near water, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so important to balance it out and do positive things for yourself. And you're right, you can want to get it done as fast as you want, but the gods will only allow you to do it as fast as they'll allow you to do it. So there's no point trying to control it. Let it go and trust the process. And it's also important that in sexual trauma, you do give yourself breaks because it is intense work. You need to give yourself breaks. When you feel you've hit a point where you're stagnating, you stop for a while. There'll be more opportunities for healing and growth. They always come once you intend it. But
Yeah.
you've got to trust the process and not push it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to finish our episode, why should we go to therapy in the first place as survivors of sexual trauma? Why should we do it?
Because we deserve better than what was done to us. And we deserve the life that we want to live. And nobody, if they're being completely honest, wants to live impacted deeply, sadly, by trauma all of the time. We want different, if we're being honest, and we deserve it. And that's why we should go to therapy. And the people around us deserve to have the best version of ourselves, as do we. and that is never someone that's caught in their trauma.
Oh, that just hit me right in the chest. I got a little bit emotional there. I think that's a really beautiful way to end this podcast. Thank you so much, Tina. Is there anything you want to plug or anything coming up regarding the Institute?
We've got a Seeds of Hope campaign starting for September until stocks sell out, where we are selling flower seeds to grow in people's gardens, and they can access that information from the 1st of September on our website, www.thebluebutterflyinstitute.org.au, and seed packets are $10 each, including postage and handling, and there's a whole variety. Well, I think we've got about 5 or 6 varieties there, and they will be mailed out to the people who purchase them every Tuesday.
Beautiful. And the best way to reach out to the Institute for a potential therapist or inquiries or whatever?
Is to contact hello@thebluebutterflyinstitute.org.au or through our Facebook page. Instagram is not the most reliable way, I don't think, but through our Facebook page, through hello@thebluebutterflyinstitute.org.au, or on my texting my phone 0405 000990.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina. That was amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
How do you feel? That was
That
really
was
good.
Yeah, it was.